I only went to the church that night because I couldn't live with the guilt anymore. I needed to confess, to say the words out loud and maybe somehow feel clean again. It was late, almost midnight, and the place was empty except for a few candles flickering in the corners. I stepped into the confessional, heart pounding, hands shaking, and waited. Father Damien's voice was calm, low, almost soothing as he asked me to begin. I spoke quickly at first, embarrassed, trying to spill everything out before I lost the nerve. But then he leaned in, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath against my ear. His words weren't what I expected. He didn't talk about forgiveness or penance. Instead, he whispered things I didn't know how to respond to, things that pulled at parts of me I had spent years trying to bury. For a second, I thought I had misunderstood. But when his hand brushed mine, deliberate and slow, I froze. I should have pulled away. I should have been horrified. Instead, I stayed. When he pushed the flimsy screen aside and pressed against me, the cold wood digging into my back, I didn't resist. It wasn't purity I found that night. It wasn't the clean slate I thought I needed. It was something else entirely, something raw and deeply human. The shame that had weighed me down for years melted into something heavier but strangely comforting. In that moment, I wasn't pretending to be someone else. I wasn't begging for forgiveness for being who I was. I had gone looking for salvation. Instead, I found surrender. And somehow, that felt more honest than any prayer I had ever said. He spoke of sin like poetry, as if each word was carefully chosen to wrap around my shame and turn it into something almost beautiful. His hands, when they moved across me, didn't grope or grab. They treated me like something sacred, something to be revered, not defiled. That only made it harder to resist. I should have run. I should have torn myself away and begged God for strength. Instead, I knelt, trembling, and let him make a disciple of my body. But Father Damien wasn't alone. At first, I thought it was the shock playing tricks on me, the way the booth felt bigger, the way shadows shifted. Then I felt it. More hands, not just his. Mouths exploring skin I hadn't even realized was exposed. Panic flared for a moment, but it was smothered by something heavier, something that made my body betray me. I realized, too late, that confession wasn't just between me and him. It was a ceremony, and somehow, I had become the offering. There was no escape now, only surrender. When he kissed me, the taste of wine was still fresh on his tongue. Bitter, sweet, with a sharpness that clung to my mouth and made me ache in ways no amount of prayer had ever stirred. His kiss was slow, measured, as if he were still giving me a chance to pull away. But I didn't. I let it happen. Maybe because part of me had wanted this, long before I ever entered that booth. When he finally entered me, slow and deep, my breath caught. There was no gentleness left, no promises of forgiveness. Only a raw connection that tore through every defense I had built. And in that moment, I understood something the scriptures never taught. Why angels fell, why they gave up heaven for something painfully, beautifully real. Because purity, I realized, was easy. It was being human that was hard. As he went on, I noticed was the roughness of his hands. Hands that should have been used to prayer books, to comforting the broken, to blessing the lost. But they were hardened, calloused from years of holding not just Bibles, but broken men. Men like himself, maybe. Men like me. When he pulled me close again, there was no pretense left. His mouth brushed my ear, and this time, he didn't bother with sweet lies or words of salvation. He whispered every filthy thing he wanted to do to me, each word sinking deep into my skin, making it harder to remember why I had come here at all. I realized, standing there in the suffocating heat of the booth, that he had saved his real sermons for bodies like mine, not souls. And somehow, that made it worse. And better. I came that night to cleanse my soul. That was the truth. But when his lips found the hollow of my neck, setting fire to every inch of me, all thoughts of purity slipped away like smoke. His whispers undressed me faster than any hand could, stripping away years of fear and guilt until I was raw, exposed, and desperate. I should have screamed. I should have shoved him away and run. But instead, I clung to him like he was the only real thing in a world I no longer understood. As he filled me, slow, measured, relentless, there was no heaven, no hell, no God watching in judgment. There was only him. His body pressing mine into the old wooden wall, his breath heavy against my throat, his hands gripping me as if I was something he needed to survive. Shame and ecstasy wrapped around me like twin vines, tightening with every movement, every breathless gasp. And somewhere deep inside, I knew, confession hadn't saved me. It had undone me completely. The moonlight sliced through the stained glass, casting holy rainbows across our naked bodies, each colored shard painting us in a light that felt too pure for what we were doing. I remember thinking, as his hands traced the curve of my hip, that if this was blasphemy, if this was the ultimate sin, then let me burn. Let me burn 1,000 times over, because no prayer, no sermon, no promise of salvation had ever made me feel as alive as Father Damien's touch. He was a man of God, or so they said. But that night, beneath the soft glow of the moon and the sacred glass, I couldn't tell if I was in heaven or hell. Every touch was slow, deliberate, reverent, like he was handling something fragile, something precious. And yet there was an unmistakable hunger behind it all, an appetite that could never be satisfied by anything but me. When he whispered in my ear, his breath warm against my skin, I realized it wasn't absolution he was offering, it was possession. The moment his body came into mine, it wasn't sanctity I felt. It was an undeniable power, a force that pulled me under, making me forget everything I had been taught about sin, about purity. In that moment, I understood something that terrified me. The only vow I would ever keep wasn't to God or any man, but the one I made with him, with Father Damien. The vow to sin with him again and again, to surrender myself to a hunger that felt more real than anything I had ever known. He told me to close my eyes and pray, and I obeyed trembling, my breath ragged. His voice was silk, coaxing, as he told me to open myself in ways no scripture had ever spoken of, no holy text had ever dared to mention. And when he entered me, it wasn't sin I felt, it was grace, savage, consuming, and endless. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care about forgiveness. I only cared about the next time, when I would be nothing more than his body and soul.